Hey there, darlings. Welcome to the Farmer's Table. My name is Jess. If you are new here, I'm so glad to have you here on my channel today. And if you're not new here, welcome back. I'm also very glad that you're here. First, I want to tell you a little bit about something I'm doing this week. This week is actually my birthday. Happy birthday to me. I have always loved having a birthday that's right before Christmas. I love the holiday season, and something that took me a really long time to understand about myself and to just be okay with is that I actually love gifts. I love gift giving. I love receiving gifts. It's definitely probably a primary love language for me if you've ever read anything about that. And I always loved having a birthday right before Christmas because it just felt like a multiplication of something that was so dear to me, which is gift giving. These days in my life, I still very, very much love giving gifts, but I've also become highly disillusioned to a lot of the stuff that exists in our world. And one of the things that I really enjoy doing for my friends and family, and I love when they do it for me, is I really like giving homemade gifts, specifically homemade food gifts. So over the years, I've kind of adopted that throughout the year, I collect baskets whenever I come across them, usually thrifting or like yard sales and stuff like that. And I get a collection of baskets together, and at Christmas time, I take an array of goodies, things I make at Christmas time, but also that I've preserved through my garden throughout the year, and I put together gift baskets with usually some fresh made bread, some different preserved things, maybe some sweets. The thing with that kind of gift, it's so much more than necessarily the value of the items in the basket. I mean, it's representative of my heart, of my time, of my effort, and of my passions with cooking in the garden. So I feel like I'm getting to share the best of myself with people. So this week, to kind of celebrate my birthday, to celebrate gift giving, I wanted to share several videos, I'm posting daily for the week, sharing the things that go in my goodie baskets. And today we're going to be talking about red wine jelly. Make sure, please, that you are subscribed to make sure you get to see all of this series. I've set a little goal for myself of wanting to hit 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and we're not quite there yet, but I think we could still squeak it out. So please make sure you're subscribed, hit the bell, like, comment, all the different things. I don't often ask for that, but I'm finding that it really does help and people really don't mind. Red wine jelly. This is such an easy thing to make. So this is jelly, like strawberry jelly or grape jelly or whatever, but it's made with red wine. And I've mentioned this multiple times that I've had mixed reactions to it. One, you probably can't find this at the store. You know, when it comes to the sale of alcohol, it can be so regulated. That is one of the reasons I love to include this in baskets. Not only is it delicious, it's unique. And so whenever you're able to give somebody something that they cannot just go buy, it just came from you, that's always a nice little special touch and a gift. People do often ask about the alcohol content. We are going to boil this, and I know that in boiling you do lose some of the alcohol content. I cannot vouch for the fact that this will have no alcohol left in it. I do let my children eat it. My thing is that once we mix this much sugar into this much wine and it ends up in this jar and they spread it on a biscuit, I just can't imagine that there's really enough for that to be a concern. The taste of it is definitely, you definitely taste the red wine. It has very strong red wine taste, but we are also putting a lot of sugar in, and so it's very sweet. I mean, it more or less tastes like a fermented grape jelly because, you know, it more or less is that. You can do this with other kinds of wine. I've actually made it with white wine also. I just prefer red wine. When it comes to what wine to buy, you just need a standard size bottle of wine. This recipe calls for 3.5 cups of wine, which is a standard size bottle. As far as the quality of wine goes, I love a good glass of wine. Don't get me wrong. You're gonna put a crap ton of sugar in this, and to me, this is really not the place to break into the wine cellar. This is an $8 bottle of wine from Costco, and that's typically what I go for, is I'm just gonna use like a cheap solid wine because we're gonna put so much sugar in it. Now, if you had like a specific wine that you really liked the flavor notes, you wanted to play with it, you totally could. But like, don't feel like you have to buy something that's a really impressive vintage for this. Now, to begin, I already have my canner back here on the stove, my water bath canner. It's heating up. I have my jars here ready. As you can see, I have a smattering of jars. This is multiple different sizes. I'm probably going to start with these because I have several of the same, but I may run another batch. It just depends on how much time I end up having today. But they're ready to go. I have a funnel here, just prepared to put my jelly in those jars. The lids are ready. I have 4.5 cups of sugar. I have half a cup of lemon juice. As mentioned, 1 bottle of wine. This is 3.5 cups of wine. And I have a box of Sure Gel pectin. Now, I most often, like when I'm doing a bunch of canning, I actually use a bulk bag of pectin, and there's a brand of pectin Pomonas that you can use like less sugar. I decided to make this video with just what you could go buy at the store. Now, if you're using bulk pectin, you probably don't need me to tell you, just follow the instructions on the back of the bag. The ratios may be just a little bit different, but for the sake of this video, you just need 1 package of pectin. So my canner is building to boiling. So I'm going to put on like medium high heat. I'm going to pour my bottle of wine in. My half cup lemon juice goes in with that. And I'm going to go ahead and mix in my package of pectin. Now I know some of you are making gifts for a lot of people, and you may ask if you can double this recipe, triple this recipe, multiply it. When it comes to making jelly, I'm sure you could. Like, I'm sure you could. I don't. I do 1 batch at a time. Simply because, just full transparency, I'm a little lackadaisical. Sometimes I get a little distracted. And because of that, my jellies set up about 9 out of every 10 times I make them. Occasionally, maybe not that frequently, occasionally I'll still have a failure where my jelly does not set and it stays liquid. And it is always because I got distracted and I did not boil for the right amount of time or whatever. So I like to do single batches because the risk of loss is less, but also I feel like it just allows the heat to distribute more evenly, and I find that when I'm doing a single batch, I typically have less failure. There was this one time that I was making literally, like, and this pot was full, it was this white pot, and I knew that I should not like triple that recipe. I knew that I should not fill this pot up, but I did it, and then I got distracted and that thing boiled over, and let me tell you, you have never cleaned up a mess in your kitchen like a pot this big of boiled over strawberry jam. It was so bad. It was literally everywhere. So I've learned from my ways. I may make a lot of mistakes, but I'll tell you this, I do learn from them. Alright, so we're going to bring this to a boil. You don't have to stir it incessantly, but do stir it occasionally as it comes up. This does happen pretty quickly. It's been several minutes, and I am now at a point of boiling. Now, there is some distinction here. You need this to be at a full boil. So what that means is that when I reach in and stir it a few times and it simmers down, like it settles, it's going to immediately start bubbling again. Alright, so see this? See how with the stir, I'm coming right back to bubbles? That's a boil. You do not want to put your sugar in before you've come to this point of a boil, or else your jam will not set. Alright, so we're going to stir in this 4.5 cups of sugar. This is why it's very important to have all this stuff prepared, because this process actually moves really quick. It's going to take me a little bit longer because of making the video, but I can make a batch of this in like 20 minutes and then the time that it takes to can it, which isn't very long. Alright, so I am mixing this constantly while the sugar dissolves into the wine, and I want to bring it back to that full boil. Not the first few bubbles, but when I have actually achieved a boil that cannot be stirred down, I'm going to start a timer for 1 minute exactly. At this point, definitely don't walk away from the stove, because once your sugar is in there, we want to keep this moving, stirring it, you know, maybe not completely constantly, but very frequently. It's probably been like 7 or 8 minutes, and I'm starting to get a really good simmer here. I like to stir jellies and jams when I'm making them with a rubber spatula so that I can scrape the bottom of the pot, make sure nothing is sticking. Also, be aware that you're not splashing a bunch. You don't want to splash a bunch up onto the sides of the pot. We want to try to just gently stir. There we go, we're coming to a boil. All right, so this is the point I would consider this a rolling boil, where it is continuing to boil even as I'm stirring. So I've now started my 1 minute timer, and I'm just gonna keep stirring without stopping for this entire minute. And then I want to immediately pull it off the heat. Okay, so we're gonna let our pot settle for just a second. You may have some like bubbles and stuff, foam on top. This batch really doesn't have a lot. If you want, for aesthetic purposes, you can scrape that off. Because whenever your jelly sets in the jar, it will be, that stuff won't necessarily go away. It'll just be like foam. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's just some people prefer a real clean, clear looking jelly. Now we are going to ladle this into our jars. Stuff sets up real fast, so you do want to move pretty quickly here. So if you do not want to can your jelly, put the lid on it, stick it in the fridge. It's fine from here. But canning it is super easy. I've got my water bath canner heated up. Now, if you don't have a dedicated water bath canner, you can just use like a big stock pot with water in it. You just need to put something in the bottom to keep, so that there's texture. Like a canner has a ridged bottom so that these jars are not sitting flat on a flat surface. But the risk there is that a vacuum can be created underneath the jars. When you're water bath canning jelly, it takes 5 to 10 minutes. So it's probably not going to happen, but just to err on the side of caution, you can put like the rack, the trivet from inside your Instant Pot. I've seen where people will put like a kitchen towel, like a small towel in the bottom. One thing I did for a long time is I would take some canning rings and just put them in the bottom of a pot and just set my jar on top of these rings. That works as a trivet. But I didn't have like a dedicated water bath canner until someone sent me one a couple years ago. I just used a stock pot for the longest time. All right, I'm putting all of my lids on. I wiped the rims off to make sure there wasn't any dribbles. Now, when it comes to processing times for jellies, I believe that the safe processing time is that you water bath can them for 5 minutes. However, more recently, what the recommendation is to do it for 10, and that if you do water bath can for 10 minutes, that you don't have to sterilize your jars ahead of time. So I just go ahead and do it for 10. These jars all just came out of the dishwasher just because this is all random jars that were out in my pantry. So I'm going to load the canner up with these. And my reward for being such a good little cook in the kitchen today is that I get to scrape the sides of the jar and eat it. So I love it when this happens because it lets me know that it's going well. So my jelly that's stuck to the sides of the pan is set up, so we're good to go. This tastes like, I mean, it just tastes like grape jelly with a little pizzazz. That's what it is. That's all it is. So you would use this on like biscuits or toast. You can also use it sort of like you would cranberry sauce. So you can put a little bit of it with roasted meat if you like sweet with your savory applications. The first time I had this, I was at a farm-to-table restaurant in Arkansas called The Root, and they were serving red wine jelly with biscuits. And I was like, this is so good. I have got to figure out how to make it. And it turned out to be just like insanely easy to make. My timer's up, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull these guys out. Anytime I can anything, I like to just let it sit on the counter overnight, make sure the seal's good, let it settle. Also just let it get cool enough to handle. So if by chance you do have a jar that doesn't seal and it didn't properly seal in the canner, just stick it in the refrigerator and use that one first. And if you don't want to can it, you can obviously put these directly in the refrigerator. As far as gift giving goes, when I'm putting these in baskets, I like to give them canned so that they're shelf stable. So I can be sure that if somebody like doesn't go through their basket for a day or two, nothing's going to spoil in it. One thing I really like to do whenever I am gifting canned goods is I actually take the outer ring off and I put a little bit of fabric down and then tighten the ring back down just to give it a little bit of flair. Now, one final note before we say farewell, I want to talk real quick about jar sizes. So these are half pints. There are 7 of them. That means that this recipe makes 1.75 quarts of jelly, and you can split that up in whatever ways you want. You could just pour it into a big quart jar and then fill another quart jar 3/4 of the way up, stick it in your fridge and use it. I really like 8-ounce jars for gift giving, especially things like jelly. I think it's a very manageable size. Now, when I'm making jams and jellies for my household, for my family, I usually process quarts because, you know, we can get through them fast enough. They're not going to go bad. Half pint jars are just a really manageable size, those 8-ounce jars. So that size of jar is the same as this and this. They all hold the same. They're just different shaped. I'm a sucker for jars. I love different jars. Another recommendation is these little 4-ounce jars. Some variation of this is relatively easy to find. And if you do one batch of wine jelly and you can it in 4-ounce jars, you're gonna get 14 jars instead of 7. And depending on your canner, you may have to run that through with 2 water bath processes. But as you just saw, this goes super fast, so you can still very easily do that in one setting. And if you're trying to give like maybe a smaller basket, or you want to put more variety, or you're giving it to a person that's just a single person that you don't think they'll get through a larger jar fast enough, these are really good sizes to use for that. I don't actually use these very much because there's nothing that our family eats that we don't need more of this, but they're so cute, don't you think? All right, well, there is an incredibly simple thing. Maybe you just make it and enjoy it yourself, but I think it is a great addition to any sort of food gift that you're making. For the uniqueness factor, it is very, very delicious. It also just doesn't take very much time, and it's relatively affordable. Between a cheap bottle of wine, 4.5 cups of sugar, and a little bit of pectin, you just gotta have jars to put it in and you're good to go. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today, and I hope you'll join me this week for more food gift ideas. I bless you. Until next time.